What's going on, Packers fans? Aaron Nagler here with Cheesehead TV, joined by a very special guest, friend of the program. It's Rob Demovsky of ESPN. Rob, how you doing? Rodgers watch. It's still continuing on through the offseason, but I think feels like we're close to a resolution. What's your sense there?
I sure hope so. I was talking to somebody at the Combine on, I believe it was last Wednesday or Thursday. You know, the days all run together in Indy.
They sure do.
But I said something to the effect of, this would be somebody who would, likely be in the know. I said, boy, I sure hope this is resolved by the end of next week, which is now this week. And that person said, oh, I wouldn't be surprised if it's earlier than that. So now it
could happen while we're talking right here on Monday afternoon.
I got my phone handy, and when I come on your show, Aaron, I don't usually I'm a little overdressed, but I just got done doing ESPN television, and I figured maybe I shouldn't take this off in case something does happen.
So wait, really you're telling me the suit coat's not for Cheesehead TV? This is upsetting.
Yeah,
I can't.
I do have jeans on underneath.
Oh, there you go.
And they're not my best jeans.
Talking about Rodgers, clearly it hangs over the entire offseason, right? Like Brian Gutekunst has done what he can do, essentially, up to this point. He joked, I think, somewhat, although there seemed to be a kernel of truth in there in his season-ending press conference about we're probably going to restructure everybody. Well, they're almost there. I mean, I think the one that isn't officially done is David Bakhtiari.
Yeah.
But
I'm sure saying Demovsky, my contract.
I know, right? Your contract. It's good to go.
Bakhtiari, he's got, I believe, $9.5 million roster bonus to like March 17th. So they still got a little bit of time there.
But outside of those restructures, I mean, any true kind of re-signings or looking at the free agency period, it's got to be on hold for this whole group until they know essentially what Rodgers plans on doing.
There are two more possible things they could do, and that's with the two guys that are in their fifth-year option, Rashawn Gary and Darnell Savage. Just taking Savage, for example, I mean, I don't think they want him on their salary cap at $7.9 million this year. That would be, that would be difficult. Now, again, do you restructure a guy who, didn't play well last year? And if you're Darnell Savage, look, he was not overly happy with the way it's a two-way street there. He didn't play well, but he wasn't overly happy either. But that's just using that as an example. Rashawn Gary, if he didn't have the ACL, he'd be the first guy that they would do an extension with, again, to get that number lower and to lock up a good player. And
you got to think, I mean, the Gary thing will get done regardless. Yeah. I would guess. Like, it's not a pressing thing because of the injury, but if you were a betting man, Rob Demovsky, and I'm not going to ask percentages because we know the history here with percentages. We don't want to go down that road. But are you buying what's kind of out there right now? It really seems from a few other outlets, guys who've covered the team for a long time have put out there this sense that the Packers are, I'm not going to say disgusted, but are really ready to move on. It does kind of, I mean, if you really are able to kind of parse through the language that Brian used with us on Tuesday morning last week, sure feels like that. But you obviously know a lot of people in that building. Is that the sense you get?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And I say that not trying to be funny. I will tell you this. When I was in Indy, for the 3 or 4 days that I was down there, I would run into somebody with the team in a hallway or in a, believe it or not, in a bar.
No, sir.
And I would come away with that conversation thinking one thing, let's just say, they want to move on.
Right.
I'd see somebody else. I'd say, boy, it sure sounds like they want him back. I'd see that person who told me, who left me with the impression that they wanted to move on. Now he leaves me with the impression, I shouldn't say because it's all read between lines.
Right.
Like literally I talked to, let's say I talked to 10 people, but 3 of them I've talked to multiple times. Those people even changed my mind after talking to them both ways. So I got to be honest with you, Aaron. I could see. I don't think he'll retire, right? I think we're fairly.
I mean, that's the least likely option. I'm not saying it's impossible, though.
Well, considering it's the least likely option, he typically tries to do the least likely thing. So maybe he will.
I'm just saying, exactly.
Assuming he doesn't retire, and assuming he. Well, here's the hard part. What if he wants to come back here? Right?
Yes.
I'm in Green Bay.
Green Bay, yes.
What if he wants to come back to the Packers and they don't want it? Like, it's easy to move on if he says, I want to be traded, right? Okay, you get it done. And although I do think there's not as many. I mean, look, the Raiders, I was told the Raiders don't want him. I think that actually had been reported out there somewhere last week.
I know. Well, and Mike Silver put it in his column that dropped, I believe, last night. that both the 49ers and Raiders are kind of off the board.
Yeah, look, we know the Jets are. I mean, Woody Johnson is desperate for relevancy.
Right.
Talked to some people out there that said, he wants them bad. So, but what if that's the only place?
Exactly.
What if, and what if, I don't know, maybe Carolina might want somebody.
Yeah, I think the Panthers are a possibility, but that seems remote.
Yeah,
right?
But what if what if Rodgers looks at them and say, well, they're not close to winning, forget that. So I just think it could be not as simple as he just says, all right, I want to play somewhere else, or they come to the mutual agreement that he's going to move on. It's not so simple, trades are hard to do under the best of circumstances,
right?
And I'm not sure where this would fall in terms of easiest or hardest circumstances.
Well, and what's crazy to me is I keep thinking back to that night a couple years ago on draft night when the bombshell dropped about Aaron being unhappy, and then we had the summer of discontent. And now he's got, back then, the Packers were basically groveling to get him back, right? Making sure they could do anything and everything in their power to get him back in the building. Now he's got the bludgeon with that contract. What's crazy to me is that thing kind of sits over the entire proceedings. And I guess, I don't know. I know most people, like fans, aren't on Twitter thinking about like roster bonuses and what the time period is that those have to be activated and things like that. But man, does he have control here or what? When in regards to exactly what you're saying, if he says, I want to come back and play for the Packers go, well, we'd really like to move on to Jordan Love. Aaron has every bit of power to say, no, that's great, but I'm coming back and I'm playing.
Yeah, I know there was part of the one report was that if he came back, he would have to be the backup. That's
never happening. I can't believe that. I've heard that now because I know it initiated in Bob's podcast with Tyler.
That's been ridiculous thing.
That's never going to happen in a million years.
Right. So that if he's here, he's a starter, obviously. Right?
Yes.
Let's just take that off the board. Yeah. Look, I remember late in the year. I don't remember exactly which game it was this year, but it was one of the. Probably before late in the year. I'm not going to say it was the last month of the season, even when they were winning. I talked to somebody, kind of after a game in the organization. And even then, it was sort of like, man, we really should not have done the contract the way we did it. And that was even when it looked like he was playing better, than he was during the losing streak. So it was, it's interesting how, and you put it great, they were groveling to get him back. Now they won't even commit to wanting him back at all. And even as the season unfolded, December 6th, Goody talked to us in the bye week. I said this on SportsCenter last week. He said, yeah, we want him back, right? But what's he going to say? You're in the middle of the season.
Right.
January 13th, Friday after the season, I believe I asked the question, do you think Rodgers who gives you the better chance to win? And he said, well, you're comparing the 4-time MVP to a guy who's never started. Basically, without saying it, he said he still thought Rodgers gave him the best chance to win. Now, on whatever it was last Tuesday, he was as non-committal as you could be. So it's definitely changed, over the last 6 weeks to a couple months.
How much do you think his decision or whatever transpires from his decision is going to drive the construction of the roster? Because we've heard many times from Aaron about not wanting to be part of a rebuild. And I guess, that word really is, a bit subjective and it depends on your definition. But man, if they're jettisoning or allowing to walk guys like Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb, Big Dog, things like that, and really taking a swing towards youth, maybe is that their way of saying, great, okay, you can come back, but we're going to go and maybe not rebuild, but we're certainly going in a different direction.
Yeah, they could use that as a way. If they wanted out and he still wanted to play, they could say, yeah, look, sure, but we're not bringing any of your buddies back, right? That's possible. Look, I think, with guys, well, especially with Lazard, I would say, and probably Robert Tonyan, my sense is that they'll let those guys hit the market, let them see what's out there. And look, maybe somebody will give Alan Lazard, Marquez Valdez-Scantling money. And if that's the case, good luck.
Thanks. Yeah, exactly.
But maybe they'll come back, maybe those guys are back. So, that's a factor. But look, if he's going to come back, you have to know that, it changes, right? You're not going to get all of your guys. And I feel like that he sort of backed off that a little bit.
A little bit,
on
yeah.
one of the
yeah, because he had mentioned it in the initial McAfee interview, and then the next week he was like, "Well, you know, I'm not really
standing on the table." Yeah,
right.
I believe he used.
Right.
So he backed off that a little bit.
A little bit, no doubt. Rob, real quick before I let you go, Rob Demovsky, ESPN here on She Said TV, because he's an absolute legend, and that's what he does. If they get to a point like, say, Rodgers is says he's back, but he wants to play, but he acquiesces to a trade, right? The trade itself, I mean, doesn't completely constrict them, but it really changes kind of the arithmetic when it comes to the salary cap. They have a lot less to work with. Do you think that will inform how Gutekunst goes about drafting? Meaning, does he lean more into some offensive skill players, some offensive linemen, just to kind of tilt the balance towards his young starting quarterback, because he can't really go out and swing big in free agency if that's the case?
Wouldn't it be funny if Rodgers moved on and they finally drafted a receiver in the first round?
So many people have mentioned this, and I'm like, I'm not going to be surprised if it happens.
I vowed a couple of years ago that I would not pick a receiver in my mock draft first round until they actually take one. So I'm not falling into it again. But in all seriousness, though, you do have to surround Love. If that's the way you go, you got to surround him with the best that you can. I think. Bringing Aaron Jones back on a pay cut, obviously, that going back to your earlier point about making sure Rodgers has guys. I'm like, Aaron Jones is one of his guys, right? So, I mean, they could have cut Aaron Jones and just moved on.
It sounds like, funnily enough, it sounds like that was a more serious consideration than I had thought.
Yeah, I mean, look, I remember I just looked it up last week. When he signed the 4-year deal, I remember I went back and looked at my story, and I said at the time, this is really a 2-year deal.
2-year deal,
and
right.
They're going to have to either cut him or restructure it. So, look, that's one guy that, if you're Aaron Rodgers and you want to come back, yeah, that's a guy I need to win, and so, Aaron Jones helps him regardless of who the quarterback is. But, yeah, I mean, they've invested so much defensively. Obviously, it's all been documented about how they disappointed, but the pieces are still there, right?
Right.
So,
yep.
Not including the defensive coordinator, but
that's a whole nother subject. We'll talk about that one later in the offseason. Rob, I can't thank you enough for making a little time here. I know time is tight and of the essence while we're all waiting with bated breath for a decision from 12. Rob, thanks so much for joining me, man.
You got it, buddy. It was good seeing you in Indy last week.